Adding and subtracting polynomials. Okay, so what we mean by polynomials is just a collection of numbers and variables separated by plus and minus signs, like so terms. So something like this, 2x plus 1, that's a polynomial. And we can even add more things. We could say like 3x squared plus 2x plus 1, that's a polynomial. And sometimes we classify them according to the number of terms they have. So we could say like this right here is a binomial because it has 2 terms. And a monomial would have 1 term, and a trinomial would have 3 terms. But in general, when we're referring to numbers and letters in an expression, we just say polynomials. So in our first example here, we have 3x plus 1 in brackets plus 4x minus 5 in brackets. So our goal here is pretty much just to collect like terms. So we're looking to get rid of these brackets. So how that works is we look at what's on the outside of the bracket, and here it looks like there's nothing. And it turns out that's kind of true. There's actually an invisible 1 there. So having a 1 outside of a bracket doesn't really do anything to it. Like take this, for example. Let's say we had a 1, and then inside the bracket we had a 3 plus 4. So if we add what's in our brackets, 3 plus 4, 7. And then we multiply that by 1, because since there's no sign, it indicates multiply. So 1 times 7 is just 7. So that 1's not really doing anything in front of the bracket. It's like, yeah, no effect. But let's say it was actually a negative 1 outside the brackets, and we still had like a 3 plus 4 in the brackets. So if we use our Bedmas rules, we have to do the brackets first. So 3 plus 4 is 7. And then now we have to multiply negative 1 times 7. So now it turned it to negative 7. So having a negative 1 outside the brackets changes stuff, but having a positive 1, it's like it's not even really there. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. So since we can't add what's in the bracket because it's not a like term, 3x and 1, you can't even add those together. What you can do is called the distributive property, which I probably should have taught first, but it's okay, I'm doing it right now. So the distributive property says that if we have a number outside the bracket, like a 2, and then we have numbers inside the bracket, like 3 plus 4, we can actually distribute this 2 amongst what's inside the brackets by multiplying it, because we're going to end up multiplying what's in the brackets by 2 anyways, so you can actually do it ahead of time. So let me just prove that by using a random example. So 2 times 3 plus 4, if we follow Bedmas rules, that would turn into 2 times 7, which would be 14. Yep, we know how to do that, it's just Bedmas. But turns out we can use this thing called the distributive property, and we can actually distribute this 2 amongst the 2 terms in the brackets. So we can do 2 times 3, which is 6, and then we'll use that plus sign. And then we do 2 times 4, which is 8. And then we add our terms together, and we get 14. So we get the exact same answer. So it turns out if you can't use Bedmas, like you can't add what's in the brackets first because, oh, they're not like terms, you can actually use that thing called the distributive property to get around that. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to get rid of these brackets here because there's just a 1 in front of the bracket, and as we discovered, that doesn't do anything. So we can actually just write 3x plus 1 without a bracket. And we can do that for the next bracket too, because look, there's a plus, and there would just be a 1, so a positive 1. We found out it's not really going to do anything. So we just do plus 4x minus 5. And that's it. So really, we just get rid of the brackets. And then we just collect our like terms. So 3x plus 4x is 7x, and 1 minus 5 is negative 4. And that's the final answer because those aren't like terms, so we can't add them. So that one's done. And now if we do our other one, it's kind of the same thing, except now we're subtracting brackets. So let's get rid of our brackets first. So in front of this bracket, there's a positive 1, and we know that's not going to change anything, so it stays 2x plus 3. But now we have a negative in front of our bracket, which we know means a negative 1. And we know that's actually going to affect what's in our bracket. So it turns out we have to multiply everything in our bracket by negative 1. So negative 1 times 4x ends up being negative 4x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So as you can see, the 4x minus 1 actually turned into a negative 4x plus 1. So that negative in between the brackets totally affected our second bracket there. And now we just collect like terms. So 2x take away 4x is negative 2x, and 3 plus 1 is 4. And that's our final answer. So that's just a quick example of adding and subtracting polynomials. So when we add the polynomials, no big deal. Pretty much just get rid of the brackets. But when we subtract our polynomials, it changes stuff. Mainly the second bracket there.